So when we talk about fractions, one of the most important things is to think about how the fraction is actually built. You'll remember that when you have a fraction like 3/4, the 3 is called the numerator and the 4 is called the denominator. Now, we typically read this, just as I did, as 3/4, which puts the focus on the 3, but actually our focus needs to be on the 4. So a better way to read this could be out of 4 parts, take 3. And another thing that we don't even think about when we say this is out of 4 parts of what? And the 4 parts have to be equal. So really 3/4 by itself is somewhat meaningless. When we say 3/4 by itself, we really mean 3/4 of 1, or out of 4 parts of 1, take 3. So when we represent a fraction like 3/4, we focus first on deciding on what the what is, on the unit, and dividing it into 4 equal parts. There are 3 main parts or models that we use. We use the area model, a number line model, and a set model. The area model can take different forms. One of the most popular ones is a bar model. So in a bar model, you just draw a long rectangle, that's your bar, and for 3/4 we start by dividing it into 4 equal parts. I divide it in half, that's 2 parts, and then each of those in half. Now notice that I drew 3 lines to divide it into 4 parts. That can be a very confusing thing at first for children. And I am going to shade in 3 out of 4 parts to show 3/4. The number line model looks the same, but it really has more of a distance idea instead of an area idea. So when I model 3/4, it'll be 3/4 of 1. So I draw a length that represents 1, and I divide that into 4 equal parts. Again, one line divides it into 2 equal parts, and then another line in each of those halves divides it into fourths. So this turns out to be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and then 1 would be 4/4. So to model the 3/4, we could draw a dot here that's graphing it, or we could show a length from 0 up to 3/4, and that's a length of 3/4. The set model is something completely different. In this case, we have a set that we divide into 4 equal parts, and we take 3 of those. So the simplest one would be a set that has 4 objects. So there are 4 objects, and I take 3 of those. And that would be 3/4 of the set, where the set is now the 1, the unit. The area model that we're going to use most often in this course is a rectangle area model. And if I have a rectangle drawn as I have here on dot paper, it is 1, 2, 3, 4 rows long, 1, 2, 3, 3 columns wide. And if I'm going to show 3/4, I divide this into fourths. Now the easiest way to divide it into fourths is to take each row. So I will just divide it into 4 equal parts, and then I will shade 3 of them. 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. Now there are other area models, and one you may think of right off the bat is a circle. Here the circle is the 1, and why to divide that into fourths and then shade 3 of them. It's another way of showing 3/4. So these 3 models are very common area models. And then we have a number line model and a set model. And they can be drawn differently. This is an example of how I've drawn that. So when you think of a fraction, think of what is the whole. A fraction is always part of a whole or a unit. How many equal sized parts has the whole been divided into? That's the denominator. And how many of those parts are selected? That will be the numerator. And the other thing that I wanted to mention as we go along through here is that we are going to be focusing on representing exactly the fraction given. Now, you and I, when we see the fraction 4/8, we're going to think 1/2. But here we need to think of that as 4 parts out of 8 equally sized parts. Okay, now can I send that? How do I send it? Oh.